Hello and welcome to this tutorial on streaming to the vMix platform using an SRT via vMix. Now you'll see here that I've got my loop going in vMix. Now let's start at the dashboard and then go over to stage control. Click on broadcast. And we're going to add an input by clicking on add input in the top right hand corner. I'm going to call this SRT test, and underneath that we'll choose SRT and click next. In step 2 we're going to have two options, testing SRT, and to the right of it I understand how SRT works. The reason for this is whilst your encoder is running, you are being billed for the time that the encoder is running. Testing SRT will automatically switch off after 30 minutes, and choosing the option I understand how SRT works will keep on running until you physically delete the input. So it's basically just a safety mechanism so that you aren't unnecessarily billed should you forget that you are running an encoding. So for this demonstration, I'm going to use testing SRT. Okay, let's click on next. In step 3, we have various video rendition options. These are the different resolution and bitrate options available to us. If you want information about the various input and other parameters of the encoder, you can go over to our help articles. This explains the various input settings, and right here at the bottom you'll see various encoder settings. We'll come back to this in just a second. In this instance we're just going to keep it as default. Underneath that you'll see our audio rendition. We're going to keep this as is, and then lastly other settings. In here we're going to select our server. Now for best performance you'd want to select the server that's closest to you, and I'm going to choose Singapore for this demonstration. We're going to keep the segment length the same, and we're going to keep the preset configuration also at the default setting. We can now go ahead and click add. Now this is going to take a few minutes. You'll see that the process can take up to 2 minutes, but if it takes longer than 5 minutes, we suggest that you delete the encoding and start again. We're going to close this. You can see the status over here, and there we can see we're in test mode. You can always refer back to your encoding details page by clicking on the settings icon or the gear icon in the bottom right of your encoding. As you can see, currently it's still busy setting up, so we're going to close that for now. Whilst that's busy setting up, we are going to pop into vMix, and our SRT information is at the bottom over here under external. If you click on that little cog, and then we'll go to output/NDI SRT settings. This will list the various outputs on your device, depends on which version of vMix you have. Generally, output 1 is what you'd be using. Our audio channel over here is set to master. We're going to be using a caller type. At host name, that's where we're going to be putting in our SRT IP, followed by the port. Our latency we're going to set depending on our distance to the cloud web page that we're sending to, and I'll show you in a bit how we calculate that. Quality for this we're going to set to 4 megabits per second. Generally 4 to 6 megabits per second is fine for 1080, and we're setting our keyframe frequency at 2 seconds, and that's based off of the parameters here in our encoder settings in our help document. And then finally, you generally want to use a hardware encoder whenever possible. Okay, let's go back to vMix and see how we're doing over here. It's almost been 2 minutes, should be done soon. In the meantime, let's go and see how far we are from the server. If you go over to cloudping.info, you can have it ping various locations. A general rule of thumb for SRT streams, you'd want to use about 5 times your ping or your RTT. So I used Singapore, which is about 193 milliseconds. So I should use, give or take, 1,000 milliseconds. If I had used Mumbai, that would have probably been the best one for me. But choose whichever region is closest to you. You'll also notice that not all the regions available on the platform is available in CloudPing. And the reason for this is not every single data center is available for live encoding. So in vMix, I'm going to go ahead and put in 1,000 milliseconds as my latency. From experience, I know this is probably going to be port 2088. Let's head back to vMix and see how our encoding is doing. We can check this by clicking on the gear icon or the settings icon in the bottom right of our input. Okay, you'll see that it's done. Here you'll see we have our stream URL, our stream key. Let's go and put them into vMix. This is our host IP. So we're going to go ahead and copy this and paste it into host name. We just basically need the IP address, so you can delete the beginning and end. And then similarly, so I'm going to copy and paste the stream key into our stream ID. And now we can go ahead and start. If you have a look at the top of the screen, you'll see a little icon SRT, and once that goes red, you know that you have connection. Now what you want to look at over here is your packet loss percentage. Now SRT sustains give or take 5% packet loss. So if you're noticing this increase above 5%, you might want to go check your network. You might have too many connections. Now in general, when you start off the stream, you might see a bit of irregularity until it stabilizes. Now we just started this. We're only about 15 seconds in. We're just going to keep an eye on this for a few more seconds just to make sure that we're good. We're quickly going to pop over back to Mimic again. The last two links in your encoding details is your HLS player manifest and your dash player manifest. Now these are used if you wanted to use this outside of Mimic and just wanted to use Mimic for encoding. This is basically how you would get an ingest encoder and a CDM, and you can embed that wherever you want. Let's close this window. Before we activate this, you might want to go have a look and preview your stream. If you click on the eye icon, it will give you a preview. And there we go, that's our video going through. And here you'll have all our different renditions. And when you're ready to take it live, click and hold on activate. And there it is. When you're done with your encoder input, we suggest that you go and activate another input. This could be a thank you page or maybe introducing the next segment in your live stream. And once this is activated, you very importantly have to go back to your encoding and click on the settings icon and delete encoding to stop the encoding. And that's also when your billing for the specific encoding session will stop. And then finally, we can go back to vMix and stop our SRT stream. And that is it. That is how you use SRT to stream to vMix to the Mimic platform. Thank you so much for joining us.